Just yesterday, I read a passage from the recent issue of the Classic Rock magazine, British magazine, and they said something about Ritchie Blackmore's wife, Candice Knight, saying that he would want to play a few gigs with Deep Purple, and it's been going on for months, I guess. Do you think that it may happen at some time in the future, provided that you're doing the farewell tour with the Purple right now? It's an ongoing tour which will continue for another year.
I can't speak for the other guys, and it's really the other guys that everybody needs to be on the same page there. As far as I'm concerned, of course, I like when musicians sit in with other musicians, makes it interesting for the audience, and I like when people come together when they've had differences of opinion. I like that. So, it won't be a problem for me. But sometimes it's hard for people to get, when they live far apart, they don't see each other at the store, and they don't, the ice doesn't melt so easy. Maybe, I don't know. I can't speak for them, but like I said, I like to see shows where people, like they trade in. We have people sitting in on this tour, friends of ours or people we've known, or people that used to be in the band. So yeah, it's appropriate for a farewell thing, but it's up to them.
I see, but you've heard the story of when you were inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame 2 years ago, and this was a little scandal, so to speak, when Richard said he would want to perform, but they banned him from playing, so on and so forth, and basically he didn't appear at the ceremony, but you were with the other guys on stage, and then there was a lot of speculation, so to speak, and Jan Gillan said clearly that there's no way he's going to play with the band because, that's basically the most solid lineup since its inception. And so my next question to you would be this. You're doing this farewell tour, especially after the last CD just came out a few months ago, Infinite, which is a great CD produced by Bob Ezrin.
Yeah, he's a great producer.
The question, which is kind of painful for me and millions of Deep Purple fans, do you really believe that this will be the end of the story?
Again, when we get together for writing or recording, we actually pretty much keep it concentrated on the music, and we don't really talk about everybody's feelings too much. We're guys, everybody has their feelings, but they don't bring them out to too much, I've heard stories, I've heard things, but I know, like I said, it's the exact same answer I had before, that it is up to those five guys to come together. And one thing that helps is not having somebody's managers talk to somebody else's manager. It's best if people can, meet face to face and talk things over. And that's if they want to, I'm sure they could come to some kind of resolution. But there's a lot of history, and they're entitled to make up their all five minds what they want to do. Like I said, one thing's for sure, I'm not standing in the way. Like I said, if you watch us on this tour, anybody I say that's a great musician that would be interesting to the audience to play, we make a way for them to perform with us, and that's typical of bands from the South, the Southern rock style. It's if we saw somebody from another band that from Atlanta when we were playing somewhere, we'd say, "Hey, sit in," and they would do the same for me. That's how I ended up on a Leonard Skinner album, just because they were friends and they were being hospitable to me. So I like, I was raised in that fashion, and it's different. In British customs, maybe it's different. I've never. I mean, I've worked for many, many years with the British guys, but they have to, you know, their history and their own customs are theirs.
So you now decided to revive Dixie Dregs for a reason. So I'm pretty sure you really wanted to play with the guys whom you used to play like long time ago. A different type of music, apparently fusion, jazz type, and you can play almost any style. We know this. There's no limits in a way that you can play music. And
Everybody has limits, lots of them.
But would you say that you are looking for a backup plan in anticipation of the end of Deep Purple, like maybe to continue playing with Dixie Dregs or with your own band, or with Flying Colors, with Mike Portnoy or Neil Morse?
No, not at all. This is a bucket list. I have a list of things I want to get done before I'm finished playing, and that's one of the big ones, was to get together with the original guys and do a tour and reunite and see the old friends and see the people. It draws people from the old days to the shows. It literally is a nostalgia tour, but we don't want to. I don't want to do this for a living. This is a special moment for us to revisit. And as far as a backup plan, my backup plan will probably be teaching. Teaching, yeah, because I have lots of technical problems with practicing constantly for 53 years.
You mean teaching guitar, or?
Yeah, maybe teaching, yeah, something like that. But but I still have on my bucket list. I have to finish the Flying Colors project, so I will be doing that. I've already started it, and I'd like to finish what I start. I hope I can be there at the last Deep Purple gig, but they are going to outlive me.
Steve, I'm pretty sure you've been asked this question a long time, but I'm still pretty curious. When you received this first call, this was back in 1993, from Deep Purple guys asking you to join the band, and I believe the first gig was back in Mexico in '94. Did you realize that you were going to become a member of something like real big? Something like, we realized Deep Purple is not just a band. It's part of history of rock and roll. I mean, they are part of the so-called unholy trinity of British hard rock. I mean, you've heard all those stories, but back in time, how did it feel when you started?
Well, I don't get impressed too easily, so I felt neutral. I said I want to. We made a plan to play 4 shows only, and then we would evaluate it, because I said it's possible that they have a big name and they're not playing anymore. Maybe they're just coasting and getting by on their name. I don't know. I want to find out, but whatever it is, I can last through 4 shows. But as soon as we got in the room and I played something and John Lord has it instantly and he plays it back, I'm like, yeah, that's really cool. And then the bass and drums come in and Gillen comes up and slaps me on the back. All right, man. It was like, wow, I love this band already. So that was just luck, I guess. You call it destiny or fate or luck, whatever it is. It was a nice chemistry. And that's the reason why it worked for me. Because through my life, I had little opportunities to try it and be in this band or that band if I wanted to. But naturally, I tended to do my own music like I did with the Dregs. But that time, the band we used up all our gigs and we're doing the same thing over and over. And we had some problems, just like all bands have problems. So we broke up. I didn't know it was going to last this long with Purple, and I didn't know it was going to continue to be a good chemistry. That's just part of the luck of the
But
draw.
the band, you stayed with the band way longer than any other guys.
Yeah, then that's because there's a nice balance there. We have, Raj is a big part of that, I think. He's he's the guy that has been there as long as Gillan, but he can say to Facey and Gillan, say, wait a second, let's I think we need to do something more like this. And they roll their eyes, oh God. And then Don and I are in our corner saying, wait, we need to do something more like this and more like that. So everybody, instead of fighting about it, we create something different than all of us would do. And Ian Gillan and Ian Pace both have real clear ideas about what they want the music to be like, and they do not hold back their opinions.
Do you still deal with the people talking to you like straight in the face, saying some critical stuff about? I'm talking about hardliners who believe that Ritchie Blackmore was the only one once and forever. How do you, have you been able to adjust yourself to first the style of the original Deep Purple songs, and how do you answer those questions from those?
Well, I defer to the band, first of all. When I joined Kansas, it was a very similar thing. I was, in some people's eyes, I was trying to replace Kerry Livgren, and I wasn't trying to replace. I was just trying to play some music with the band. But Kerry wasn't there, and I was. So it's like, who does he think he is trying to replace Kerry? And the only reason I'm playing now with Deep Purple is because Ritchie left the band. It wasn't anybody trying to replace him. He was just gone. And, so, and they finished the tour with Joe Satriani, and then wanted to find somebody that was different than Ritchie, but who had lots of writing experience and working with, I think the fact that I had been in Kansas and had seen what it's like to be the new guy, I think that helped.
So what do you think was your biggest contribution to Deep Purple style in terms of the band has been evolving within the years after you recorded the very first records, Perpendicular, in 1994, which is to me one of the best still.
Well, I think that record has a lot of my contributions, like the guitar parts and the idea of the tune. Sometimes I feel like screaming, and luckily Roger and John Lord heard me kind of noodling with it and said, let's work on that, let's take that. And before the end of the day we had recorded it. And the Aviator, that's just a different style. I always thought that Purple could use a little bit of that. You know how Jimmy Page does some acoustic things with early Led Zeppelin, like Gallows Pole and things like that. I just thought we could do that too, and pushing in little different directions, like some of the tunes on the Bob Ezrin albums, that I've done, and Uncommon Man, those kind of just unusual riffs. That's my main contribution. I'm not a rock guy that's going to be able to nail Ritchie's style perfectly, obviously, but I grew up the same time, the same influences as those guys, in a different country, but same musical influences. So we have a lot more in common than people think.
You said once that you actually paid for your first car playing Smoke on the Water with cover bands. Is it really true, or
Yeah.
you were just joking?
No, I was in cover bands forever. The whole time I was doing my own thing. Because the way it works in the kind of music I like to play, like with the Dregs or with my own writing, is you pay the bills by being in a cover band, and you satisfy your intellectual challenges by writing music that doesn't pay very well. So yeah, I remember the first time I played that with Sammy O'Banion's band.
Well, this was a long time ago when you were
when it first came out.
Teenagers.
Yeah.
When it first came out.
Yeah.
So then, how would you explain? It's still a mystery to me, as well as for many other Deep Purple fans, that in America, within the last 20 years, Purple was not as popular as like back in the 70s, and in Europe, mean,
'cause
they're
they
still
didn't
playing huge stadiums. I mean, they're real big.
They didn't come here very often. And the MTV was a big thing, and the band had broken up right as MTV was really becoming big. And if they had been there and had lots of videos on the TV, then they'd be perceived, much bigger than they are in the States. However, because the band has finally at least started visiting regularly, we've increased our audience by a good margin in the U.S. So that's a good thing.
A few short questions, and then we will be done because I don't want to hold you out.
Yeah, I got to get warmed up and changed for the show.
How do you deal with the problem of, again, it's a painful issue of aging in rock and roll, like especially talking about Deep Purple, we realize that Ian Gillan's voice capabilities are not exactly the same as it used to be. He cannot do many things, like for example to perform Child in Time, the way it was on the Deep Purple and rock. And I realize you play the guitar, so you don't sing, but especially for a singer, it's
for a guitar player
thing.
that works really hard. It's very hard on me, on my wrist, and so I can only say that you have to work around your limitations. And at some point, I think it's appropriate to say, I'm not going to charge people to come in to this concert anymore. I'm going to, hand it off to the younger generation. I think it's appropriate to say that at some point. And I think, it's sad, when you grow up your whole life playing. But having said that, Deep Purple, they're supposed to know that this is our last tour, but they act like they don't know it.
It's like, Kiss, they announced the farewell tour like almost 20 years ago. It's been still going on like forever.
Well, that's why I said I think they may outlive me, because they just don't want to. They don't want to see this end. They love it. They really love it, and I think that's why people in the audience love them, because they really love it.
And Steve, by the way, I was so disgusted to know the story about your beautiful guitar being stolen in to see a few weeks ago. Have you been able to recover this? Or?
No, nothing.
This is insane. I think thieves stealing guitars from guitar players and musical instrument, they should have the
It was a one of a kind handmade guitar made just for me. That's the problem. Well, it's not just a guitar.
Hopefully they'll find it.
Yeah, well,
sooner or later.
They don't have a real good record with that.
Thank you very much for your time.
Let me say one more thing to everybody who's coming to the Deep Purple shows this year. Is we may be older than your dad, but we're young inside, and we're actually can't wait to play. Because it's very, very special band for that reason. The amount of energy, just amazing.